What'll do? Just my mustache from Milan. Sure hope so. God damn it. Smooth move on my part. Smoked a little DMT yesterday. And I burnt like a big fucking hit and just shredded my throat. I don't think it's anything too serious. Had to cut back on the smoking a bit, but fuck, old harvest die hard, eh? But yeah, knock on wood. Hopefully it's gotten better so far. Hopefully it'll continue to get better. But I tried to make this video this morning, and I was doing such a fucking cohesive, solid job, despite, feeling the benzo withdrawal fucking hardcore, kicking my ass up and down the street, twitching like crazy. I managed to make a, pretty solid series of arguments, on what I deem to be the most valid sort of pessimistic perspective on religion. And it's actually very fitting because, one of my favorite channels, Fat Black Satanic International, or as he is better known, the 30 Hits of Acid guy, who said that he reached out to me a couple times being like, yeah, let's collaborate on the project, but I'm not banking on it because it hasn't happened by now. And I first contacted him when I started my channel, and he said the same thing, so whatever. He's got life, so can't fault the guy for it too much. I love his content, and I find a lot of his stuff very thought-provoking, and it really contrasts a lot of my perspectives on stuff. But like his latest video was kind of a very raw, like unabashed dissection of religion, and it just so happens that the part of Thomas Ligotti's Conspiracy Against the Human Race that I'm on right now, just finished actually, is dealing with religion, because since he cites a lot of people, he cites people as Schopenhauer to basically ripping Nietzsche a new asshole for his whole idea of the Übermensch, about like he outlines in Thus Spoke Zarathustra, a book I haven't read, but I know all about the contents of it and how it's been so widely misinterpreted by people over the years. That's where the whole super soldier thing came from with Hitler, because he thought the Übermensch, this idea of a superhuman where they didn't need religion anymore, they could live as a human but in the mindset of God or something like that. He basically says that Nietzsche was sort of a traitor to his own philosophy of nihilism and pessimism. I don't regard Nietzsche as a nihilist. I've made a video putting forth my arguments on that. I think he's actually an optimist because of that idea of striving to, attain a degree, actually supreme enlightenment, while also having, corporeal, mortal form, and also, seeing time as this flat circle, so to make every action in your life, metaphorically speaking, to make every action in your life as though it's an action that will be repeated through all of history, and again and again and again once time ends and starts again. So, to find meaning in that, and that's not a bad thing, to make every moment count, sure. But that's assuming we actually have willpower from moment to moment. agency, so on and so forth. And you say Schopenhauer, who is considered kind of the grandfather of pessimism, and he was kind of the first person that I read when I got into it. He even takes parts of William James, the grandfather of psychology, a lot of people say, because he preceded Freud, and he was called an anthropologist in his time because the whole title of psychologist and the ideas that came with it, popularized by Freud, just didn't exist yet. But his ideas were very similar. I would personally say more scientifically based than Freud's. And I would also contend that William James just there's more validity to what he had to say than Freud, who I think maybe blamed the fucking buckets of cocaine Freud was doing, but I think he got a little fucking kooky. But I actually used to own a copy of Varieties of the Religious Experience, and it fascinated me because it apparently is a series of transcripts from lectures that he did, but it is composed with such cohesion and articulation to what he's saying that it reads like a very well planned out technical novel. But first of all, like most of my books, I remember giving it to someone and they lost it or whatever, I can't think of a single book I've given anyone that has been actually read, past whatever may be on the first like inner sleeve or the back of the book. But whatever. But I got a sense when I first read that he was actually advocating for religious, spiritual exaltation, saying that it's a good thing to be enlightened, but one of the phrases, not phrases, but I guess responses to a question when someone really pressed them on, is being alive a good thing? He recanted that, it's kind of like being a dog who's born and raised in a lab just to be vivisected alive on a table. So, just cut up and opened up and taken apart, without regard for your pain, but for the good of science, sort of thing. So I think it's safe to say that he was well aware of the suffering that comes with, being a conscious individual who's acutely aware of what we have to do to survive and the compromises we have to make to do so, and the unfulfilled this or that comes with it, and everything else under the sun that can make someone feel fucking anguish, miserable, and give them physical pain, all that, things that are not so much apparent in members of the animal kingdom. A lot of say fish, for example, don't have the neurological capacity to even feel pain, and a lot of animals I always use this analogy. This is one that I kind of coined, but I think it describes it fairly well. You watch nature footage, that David Tennant style, Nat Geo stuff, Planet Earth or whatever. You'll see lions chasing gazelles. The gazelles will be running like their lives depend on it, because they truly do. They will do everything just that their evolutionary mechanisms can do to try and get away from that lion and survive, no matter how futile their attempts may be. But as soon as that lion, after dipping and diving, gets its fucking jaws around them, they just sort of lie down, they give up, and they accept their fate. They accept that they're going to get eaten alive and they're going to die. You know, we're not like that. For the most part, like, you know, even if you have no real desire to continue on, like, fucking, you know, if you, say, get hit by a car, fucking, you'll probably do everything in your power to try and survive, because that's just, you know, your evolutionary mechanisms, and that is, you know, largely why he makes the point that we are essentially slaves to determinism, not in the traditional hard determinism, you know, just fate, destiny, whatever, fucking, you know, that shit, like, you know, religious beliefs for the most part, I think, are just cop-outs for when the brain can't find patterns in chaos. You know, to be more specific, say, like, say your fucking kid or whatever gets hit by the car and fucking dies. You know, a lot of people will go, well, that was God's will. God had a plan. He's in heaven now. Like, it's a way of assigning meaning to what is inherently meaningless and giving shape to what is otherwise static. Just like, it's like how the brain will see faces in the clouds or, you know, on the surface of the moon, because we would want to feel like we can make sense out of things when there is none. It gives us this reinstated sense of power in our understanding over everything. But Ligotti, he's really got some colorful, eloquent, mind you, but very vulgar, frankly hilarious descriptions of Christianity and Islam. The book's in my bag and not in front of me, so I'll have to paraphrase for you, but you know, I personally, I think monotheism, and I describe monotheism in the same way Robert Anton Wilson does, so Judea-Christian-Islam, you know, belief in one supreme God whose, you know, prophet is essentially like an incarnation of them, that they sacrificed to kind of redeem the fact that in preceding texts they came off as merciless and petulant and whimsically violent. Like, you know, fucking look no farther than the Old Testament for that. But you know, I wouldn't necessarily consider, say, Buddhism to be monotheistic, but Ligotti also takes a fucking crack and a half at Buddhism. But I'll get to that. I'll start with the more dangerous religions first, which I think are the monotheistic ones. He calls Jesus a glorified savior on a stick who was put together like Frankenstein put together his monster with undead body parts, or with dead body parts that became undead. A savior on a stick, like, oh boy. Yeah, he's really not holding back there. And with Islam, he says, you know, Allah pimping fucking 72 virgins while Muhammad beats his drum. Like, oh boy. You know, and it's not just for the sake of edgy atheism or whatever, you know. Said like he has a whole chapter on Buddhism, and interestingly points out the wanting paradox of how in Buddhism you're supposed to, like, the ultimate goal to strive towards, so you can attain nirvana, you can become reincarnated without any assurance that no matter how good you are, you'll be reincarnated at some point, maybe not in the next lifetime, but some point into something good, which, you know, fucking is a bit of a metaphysical roulette wheel, if you ask me, but I mean, at least with a roulette wheel, you have something like a 50-50 chance. I mean, could be less than that. I don't really gamble because I already spend enough money on frivolous shit as it is. But the whole wanting paradox is essentially that you're striving to eliminate all desires. So, particularly they focus on materialism and things that I think bring hollow senses of fulfillment, perceived fulfillment, reward. When I can agree with that. I have my own problems with materialism, consumerism. I'm also a product of both those things, and I'll get something I've been saving up for, and I'll be like, oh, this is cool for like a week, and then kind of forget about it, and then just great, I've got more stuff stacked up. But if you truly become like the sterling example of a Buddhist, and you face all desires for anything, you're still desiring nirvana. You're still desiring a better life in the next one. And typically a lot of people aren't aware of that. With the whole idea of reincarnation, it's not supposed to be that you get a better life the next time around again. It's like, yeah, if you've proven yourself, you may get it eventually, but there's no assurance that it will happen next time. Supposing reincarnation is real, and it's in my many years of trying to seek out spiritualism, I tried to embrace the idea of reincarnation, and like everything else, it didn't strike me as having any truth to it. But he also talks about how Buddhism took a lot of its practices, its outlook, beliefs from Hinduism. And he, interestingly enough, cites this guy, Judea-Christian-Islam, I believe his name was, who he was a guru, kind of somewhere between Hinduism and Buddhism, which again, a lot of likewise characteristics between the two. But then he had a legitimate near-death experience, and his ego was fucking shattered to the point where he had the cognition skills of a tree frog for years. And in that place of near death, and in that place of prolonged ego dissolution, he came to the conclusion that everything he had been preaching was wrong. That enlightenment is just another illusory idea that seems to get its hooks in people. So gurus typically will exploit set ideas so they can, garner followers, make money, have a harem of women, whatever the fuck, and so he's become, if you, I didn't know who he was. My mom knew who he was because she's, been in and out of flim-flam from one religion to another, being in and out of New Age type beliefs, has a lot of New Age friends, and I talked to them about, these very ideas, which gets them very offended because it goes against everything they stand for, which fair enough, it's your prerogative to feel how you feel and believe what you believe, but it's also my prerogative to do the same. Yeah, they all knew who he was, but they didn't know that he was so critical of every form of metaphysical belief that suggests there's more to our existence than more and more magic to our existence that, despite our, fucking over a million years of evolution and every metric we've developed since then, scientifically or otherwise, we haven't been able to prove without a doubt that, with even an inkling of proof that, there is God or there is paranormal stuff. Like yes, there are obviously phenomena we don't understand in the universe, and that very much, I think, could be sort of an explanation for a lot of paranormal stuff, because I do think there probably is validity to what, millions upon millions upon millions of people have reported. But I'm just, I have every empirical experience I've had, I've been able to explain away. And not because I wanted to. I mean, for years and years and years, I wanted to think, oh, I saw a UFO. I saw my granny's ghost when she died, and so on and so forth. There was comfort in that. So, the silver lining to actually making the rather difficult decision to debunk these things, not just for the sake of being a cynic, but for the sake of just questioning what was so ingrained in my mind for so many years, and why, like what were the psychological mechanisms behind it. I think this was one of the first videos I uploaded, was debunking my own paranormal experiences, and it's interesting because I haven't heard anyone else do that, but I think it's got less views than any of my other videos. Mind you, the paranormal experiences I've had, they're nothing fucking special. And again, I was able to, take each one apart and apply a conventional explanation. And I just did it in the span of about 20 minutes for the, 4 or 5 that I've, supposedly experienced over the years. But, one thing that Ligotti doesn't touch on when he talks about Buddhism in this chapter, I believe Buddhanomics is what he called it, is that, people see it as, oh, this is a religion bereft of violence, which isn't true. It's not true. I remember an episode of Penn and Teller's Bullshit. It was the one with Christopher Hitchens, where he talks about how Mother Teresa was actually kind of a sadist and almost fetishized her sadism. I'm saying almost just to be fair, as I can't say one way or the other for sure, but I would lean towards saying that it was, at least bordering on erotic for her to, watch these people suffer in her home for the dying, which had just deplorable conditions. But the other thing they examined was Gandhi and the Dalai Lama. And although Tibet hasn't had, and this is probably as a result of, the Chinese Communist Party making it very hard for them to do much of anything, which, sucks for them. As I said, I have less problems with Buddhism than I have with other religions, but that doesn't make them fucking flawless by any stretch. They had slaves. They had a lot of slaves. They're still in Tibet. Just these piles of skulls. And each one has the eye socket gouged out. Because what they would do if you stepped out of line as a slave, because it was everyone but the monks who were slaves. If you stepped out of line at all, they'd stick a red hot poker in your eye. So, religion of peace, like all of religions of peace. not as fucking colorfully fucking caring about humanity as they like to make themselves out to believe. But once again, less problems with that. And I do actually find some Taoist belief to be worth embracing if you are going to embrace some sort of metaphysical ideology. But with that being said, the reason he talks about this stuff, and he does a very good job of fluidly going from criticizing Nietzsche for basically catering to edgy atheists into his own criticism of religions. The reason I bring this up is because it's relevant to what he talks about when he cites Peter Waffle-Zapfe and the psychoanalyst, I think his name was Thomas Smith or something like that. See one of my earlier videos, I believe it was part 2, where I talk about this, where it outlines the ideas that people, for the most part, not even consciously utilize to repress the fact that they are conscious and aware of their own suffering, the fact that they will labor and feel pain until they die. And so in these 4 beliefs, these 4 coping strategies, these are laid out by 2 different people, Zappa being the philosopher / mountaineer. That staircase doesn't lead anywhere. Gotta go down the loud street, apologies. But Smith, and I could be getting the name wrong because he cites a lot of people in this book, he outlines 3 techniques which are synonymous with the first 3 that Zappa talks about. First being isolation, and then the psychoanalyst says jamming. I may be getting these mixed up in the order, not Zappa's, those I've got memorized by heart, but isolating yourself from the things that make you suffer, from the things that make you conscious, and then jamming being kind of the same thing, jamming out, not in the sense that we know that phrase today, but jamming is in fucking just pushing away these bitter realities, and then distraction, evasion. So pretty self-explanatory, distracting, evading those same issues. And anchoring is the last one. I am actually blanking on Smith's term. I have this written down, but they describe the same things, which is essentially investing yourself in a belief system that is typically something that it's inherently unprovable, and it's also, like Carl Sagan says, absence of evidence is an evidence of absence. So, people will go, yeah, well, you can't disprove it, but you can't prove it, but you can't disprove it either. So, just like fucking, there's just mental acrobatics, if you ask me, but it explains why people get thrown headlong into, a church, or, New Age beliefs are very common in my city anyways, or, taking psychedelics for enlightenment purposes. And don't get me wrong, I've had, profound revelatory experiences on psychedelics, but, no matter how close I feel I come to being oh, the preternatural, the supernatural, it's real. Like, I'll give it about a day and be like, yeah, I was messing with my neurochemistry, so it's not exactly logical for me to come to that conclusion. But, yeah, and then the last one, which there's no equivalent for on the psychoanalyst side, but is very much a true means, and I think a more honest and practical means of dealing with the issue of, consciousness and suffering and life being all it's cracked out to be, sublimation. And, so it's basically expressing, projecting these issues in a way that it manages to allow you to at least unburden yourself a bit. And, for Ligotti, like, he used the example of writing, and for Zappa, it was mountaineering. Like, that's what he was known for. He was known for his mountaineering. Like, the only pessimistic philosophy that he would, like, got any regard, and it was really only because Ligotti cited his stuff, was his essay, The Last Messiah, which talks about these coping strategies. But in any case, I gotta run to get on the C bus, so I'll wrap it up here and I'll continue it later.